First, I'm really happy to welcome Kim Morris to the show, who's here to share more about the beautiful costumes of College of DuPage's theater show, A Christmas Carol. I think I meant to say College of DuPage's theater department. Sorry about that. But welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Kim, tell us about this costume.
Well, this is one of our Fezziwig dancers from basically Scrooge goes back in time to see parts of his life that he went wrong, and this is a party at Christmas in about 1812. So we have a whole bunch of people who are danced and ready to have a good time, and this is one of our little ladies, and I just love her.
So Kim, how many people did you tell me were in the cast?
This year we have 59 people, 37 adults and 22 children. And so
59 plus 22?
No. 22. Sorry.
So 59 total.
59 total.
So how many costumes do you think total, with the going back and forth and this and that?
It is probably going to be close to 120 costumes because we do travel through 3 different time periods. We have people who play multiple roles. So
what are the time periods?
We have the modern, which is about 1860. Then we travel back to...
So present day, not modern.
Present day.
So it starts in 1860.
Correct.
Then we go back to?
1812.
Okay.
And then we go back to about 1795. So we get beginning of Scrooge, Scrooge as a young man, Scrooge as an old man, and we get all 3 of those time periods.
So so to help the audience understand, we're going back in time, the silhouettes of the costumes change, yes?
Absolutely.
With the period. Tell us, what's the big difference they would know? Like, you say you start in 1860. What's that silhouette look like?
1860, you want to think Civil War, you want to think Gone with the Wind, so the giant hoop skirts, lots of fabric, the cute bonnets, capes. Think Dickens. It's the traditional Dickens look.
Okay.
Because that's when Charles Dickens lived, is about 1860s.
What are those hoops made of?
They are actually layers of cotton with steel, spring steel boning in it that hold it out to give you the lovely tiers, and then petticoat and dress, and so there's lots going on there. But they're giant, and so that will really give a good indication of when we change time, because you start out big, then you go slender, and then the earlier time period is just children, so we don't get to see of the big adults.
So when you're making these costumes and you're looking at, because the more fabric, the more expensive.
Yes.
Right? And we do this show every other year. So many of these pieces I would hope you can reuse.
Yes.
But do you end up making new every year?
We end up making some new things, definitely, depending on our cast, because the sizes of actors change all the time. So I want to make sure whomever is cast in whatever role looks as best as they possibly can. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we make new, sometimes, most of the time, we have a large enough stock that we can pull and tweak and make things work. But every year we do end up building a couple things. Mm-hmm.
So when you are making, or you think about those old hoop skirts, what were they made of originally?
A lot of them were whalebone, because the whalebone is flexible and came in large pieces because the animals were giant, but also steel. They would make steel hoops and hold them together with cotton cording. So a cage hoop, a cage crinoline, looks like a giant cage that these women would wear. So they could end up wearing 35 and 40 pounds of clothes between the steel and the fabric and just the trimming. We're not quite that mean. We don't do 5 petticoats on top of it. So I try to be a little kinder to the modern actors who are not at all used to wearing corsets and crinolines and 800 yards of fabric. But it's still a lot of fun for them.
I remember when I was in college and taking costume history, and the teacher brought a hoop in once. And then he also brought in this little teeny stool. Yeah. And I was like, what's with the stool? And he goes, well, he would make us dress in the period. Well, this was an original one with the steel. Yeah. You can't move. You can't sit. You couldn't sit. They had to perch on these little stools. And it's amazing now when you think about how constricting those clothes were, in so many ways.
Yes.
And now you're like, they wore that all day? Like, what'd you do?
They wore that all day, and the wealthy people would switch outfits out depending on what they're doing. You have your walk-in dress, you have your dinner dress, you have your lunch dress.
A dress you could sit in probably, right?
Yeah. Well, and then they have their lounging gown or their house coat, which is less, but it's still a lot of clothes. Our modern versions are a little bit more flexible, don't have quite as much rigidity to them. But yeah, the perching is a thing.
And when you store them, I've seen you store them. They're on their side.
Yes.
All the dresses collapse like hula hoop, like a slinky.
Yeah.
Almost, right?
A slinky hung on a hanger, and that's the only way you can store them because they take up so much space.
Well, and I'm sure that impacts the dressing rooms even. Like, you can't put a dozen girls in a small room.
No, thankfully, there are layers of width in our show according to how wealthy the character is. So we have a couple, Fred's partiers are wealthy people, so we've got like 6 women in hoops, and then we've got the sellers on the street who are just lots of petticoats, so they're not 6 feet wide, they might only be 3 feet wide. So that will help our production a lot, is we don't have, most of the cast aren't the wealthy people, so we got lots of street urchins, which is a lot smaller silhouette, but yeah, the dressing would be impossible if everybody were 6 feet wide as they're trying to negotiate the hallways. So
is there any different conceptual thing that's happening this year with the show that's different?
I think Amelia Barrett, our director, she's trying to really capture the light and the color and the fun. So it's
the light and the color of the fun of
just the story. It's a fun story. I mean, it's a ghost story, but it's also, so in the past we've really focused on the ghost stories, and we've had some elements where a little more scary for younger children. So we're trying to lighten even the scary bits up a little bit. So it's not as terrifying if you're bringing your 4-year-old to the show. It won't be super scary. There's also an element of a snow globe that Fred, Scrooge's nephew, gives him as a gift, and we're using that to kind of be the impetus for the whole story. And there'll be lighting and projections that help to draw it in together to make like the history scenes feel like you're traveling and captured a moment in a snow globe. But mainly focusing on color and fun and the joy of the show and how it finally ends up, and Scrooge getting a new lease on life.
So it'll be a more uplifting version of A Christmas Carol?
Well, yes. I mean, Christmas Carol is always uplifting because Scrooge...
Well, the end is.
Right.
The end, I hope, is uplifting, but it's supposed to be going back and going, oh my gosh, I messed up, right?
Exactly. Yes. And it still will be that.
So what about the ghosts? The ghosts, what's different about the ghosts? Anything?
I don't know that they're going to be, well, okay, so Jacob Marley is not going to be as terrifying as he is in the past. The actor himself is a giant man. He's like 6'4". He's a big guy. So we have used black light in the past, which is actually pretty scary on stage, but it is also limiting for the actors because you have to be contained in an area, because the black light itself only works if it hits the face,
right? Or
if it hits the thing that has a black light treatment. So we're stepping away from that just to take him into a regular ghost instead of a glow in the dark ghost. So that is the little difference there. But our other ghost, we have Past, who's going to be sparkly and white, and she's this very angelic.
This is the Ghost of Christmas Past.
Correct.
Okay.
Ghost of Christmas Past is a very sparkly, angelic dancer woman who is light on her feet, and so she is the ghost of Scrooge's past. So I have her dressed kind of about the year Scrooge would have been born, which is about 1795. So think Marie Antoinette, like big tall wig,
okay,
and panniers, which are the side pocket. So that she's very rectangular, but she's also going to be light and sparkly and dancy. Christmas Present is Ghost of Scrooge's present. So she's got a huge oversized hoop skirt, and she's this giant woman who comes in on a platform, and children come out from under her and
out from under her dress, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So there's fun special effects.
There is lots of fun.
And the show's an hour long.
Yes.
And it begins right after Thanksgiving.
Yep.
To get everybody kicked off in
Black
the holiday
Friday.
spirit.
Black Friday.
Be here. Well, thank you all. Thank you for coming and for bringing one of the costumes along. It's really lovely, and we're excited to see what you do with it.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
College Theater's A Christmas Carol begins right after Thanksgiving, so make sure to get your tickets soon. Thanks for coming, Kim.
Thanks for having me.